Hi, everyone. My name is Linda Golik. I'm the Health and Wellness Consultant for Bellin Health, and we're really excited to have you with us today for our first session in our new series, Mental Health Moments. So we know that with everything going on surrounding COVID-19, there has been extra concern about us and our employees, our communities, our family members, and what's going on with their mental wellness. So we decided to start this series. We really wanted to bring you some additional resources to help you and the people that you work with and the people that you hold dear. So I'm very excited today to be having a discussion with Charles LaTorre. Charles was one of our guests on some employer town halls that we've been doing to bring information about COVID, and Charles got raving reviews, so we're really happy to have him with us today. So Charles, good to see you, and just so we can hear you, you need to press *6 on your phone to unmute.
Good to see you too.
Hi, Charles. Great to see you. Charles, if you could just maybe start out, just give us a little bit of background about yourself so people know who they're listening to today.
Sure. Yeah, I'll take just a minute or two. I work primarily in mental health. I've worked in public health a lot of my career as well. So really have a in-office as well as outside of the office background. Love doing both, actually. A lot of my clinical work is with marriages, relationships, individual work with an array of emotional areas. And one other thing that I do with Bellin is work in sports psychology, the area of sport in human performance. At the end of the day, a lot of what I'm all about is identifying who we are, and where and how we want to get better. So where is that spot for us of making sure that we meet what is possible for us is a lot of what I wind up doing.
Beautiful, beautiful. I think that's such an important point that you bring up, Charles, that it really needs to be an individual approach, right? What's best for us? So what's best for me may be different than what's best for my next door neighbor, and we all can just strive to be better.
That's a great point. You know, the uniqueness, in fact, I love where you're going with it, the idea of uniqueness of who we are and what we're about. What is something that one person wants to cultivate and do more of is maybe something that somebody else wants to transform and do differently. So everybody who walks in the door is incredibly unique, and part of the treatment process is finding the uniqueness of a particular individual and where they want to go with it. Part of what's working for them and what isn't, and then what adjustments we make from there.
Great, great. So Charles, you've been in the field for a while, and certainly COVID-19 has brought about changes that you probably can really give us a different vantage point on. What are you seeing right now? What are people experiencing, and why are they experiencing those things?
Right. So a variety of things. But what I would say is this. There's this basic, I would say, if you put it all together, the wide variety, almost in its own way, acclimates to a couple categories. One is financial stress. The stress that some people are experiencing, some people paycheck to paycheck, some not even there. They've lost the capacity to actually make ends meet, or they're at their wits' end to that place, getting there. So financial stress, unbelievable. Secondly, the uncertainty, I think, is one of the other biggest factors. Change in personal status. I no longer work, or I now work from home. And even though I'm working from home, but my kids who are now at home and not at school still see me as mom or still see me as dad, and that impacts me from the way that I'm able to get my work done. When I was actually at the office with greater structure, greater routine, So I've seen people's routines thrown off wildly by the change this has created. But I would say more than anything, at the end of the day, the most significant impact has been on emotionality, that being either anxiety or depression, or for a lot of people, both. And let me say one more thing about that, kind of what I've noticed in terms of the progression, like how that's even evolved. So, and there's kind of two elements to it. The first one is we know scientifically that a wandering mind is an unhappy mind. A guy named Dan Gilbert at Harvard wrote a great study up an article about that topic. So people, pardon me, who have more free time, more mind time wandering. So worried about the past, worried about the future, and I always say that the anxious mind is either in the past or in the future, but the quiet mind is in now time. So part of what we're finding is that creates greater anxiety, number one. And when you stay there longer than you typically might, not only are you more anxious, but you can become more depressed as well. The other factor in the depression is the greater isolation. Even several people today that I talked to alone describe this. The uncertainty leads to my anxiety. The lack of social connection, even though I'm doing it digitally or online, however they do it, the lack of what I call the oxytocin connection leads to an oxytocin deficit, and we become more depressed when we have that interaction that is lessened. So those are the things that I would say most commonly are what bring people into my office at this stage. And then the last thing I want to say, I said the two elements of it, that's all things equal, right? So imagine somebody who's already struggling with those particular areas of depression or anxiety or social contact. This exacerbates what already may have been somewhat prevalent in their experience to begin with. So then actually those things become more prominent in that individual's emotional experience.
The wandering mind. And I think there's so much for people to wander about right now. That's definitely adding to a lot of things for people. So what do you think people are really looking for right now? What are people asking you about, or what are they searching for?
I think in many respects it starts with what I call an appraisal. Okay, so here's my appraisal. Here's my situation. Here's the test. I mean, for one thing, what I've seen, and the most amazing part to me is everybody has their own resilience tests in life, right? Mm-hmm. You've had them, I've had them. Everybody on the call has had something they have had to deal with independently, and they find out how resilient I actually am. Am I the person I want to be through this resilience test? And on the other side of it, am I happy who I've become, right? So in a way, we all have those over time. So we all have our baseline level of resilience. Never, ever in my lifetime have I seen a scenario in which all of us globally are going through a similar resilience test, all at the same time, with the same stressor that's challenging this resilience. So I think that's one of the things that's just in their own way coming in like, okay, here's what's happening to me. How off am I? Am I like, where is my reaction? And so part of the initial process is normalizing this common universal reaction to what we're going through, the common humanity part. I think even if they're not asking for that, that's a lot of what they find relief in, like, oh my gosh, I thought I was the only one experiencing this as acutely or as dramatically as I actually am. So I think that's one of the starting lines of being able to find out where I am in this spectrum of common humanity, And then the other part is adaptation. So if this is the change, this is my adversity, how am I going to adapt? What is going to be my strategy? So taking appraisal now of what their go-to strategies already are, what they're going to be moving forward, what we actually cultivate because it's working so great, and what we want to transform because right now this isn't working as well as you want it to, or it has in the past, because this is now a whole different experience that we're going through. So that part of it is the area that I find they're walking in the door wanting most. What's working, I can do more. What's not, and what do I need help, and how can I transform that?
So what are your recommendations for people? You know, a lot of people are feeling a lot of different things and experiencing things they've never felt before. What do you recommend? Where does somebody start? What are some practical things that all of us can really start to practice?
Okay, I love where you're going with this even more. I think this is like the heart and soul of mental health in many respects. The go-to strategies that I have, and for me personally, and I'm talking everybody, looking at what's my appraisal, what works, what doesn't, and more than anything else, this idea of there are specific ways that I can adapt and make changes right now. So the three most important areas tend to be physiologically, that the one that I think is most foundational, someone described it to me today as their foundation, that if I don't have in my life, if this physiologically my go-to strategy isn't working for me, it's like having a basement in sand rather than a strong foundation. And for this person's in particular idea is a breath-focused activity. And what I typically recommend is an inhale for 5 seconds, a hold for 2, and then exhale for 8. And the key to this is that, one, when the exhale of our breath is longer than the inhale, we are signaling to our brain, our system, our physiological system, that we've got this. We're going to be fine. This is all going to be okay. That calming system, that area that builds confidence and increases a sense of calm. When people can just learn, and within an hour of that first meeting, this is what I can do to help, and they feel it immediately, that's like that. 15 seconds worth can create that. That's a fantastic start. The second part are things that they can do behaviorally. And most people already have a number of these. So the idea is, what are the things that I behaviorally do? We could go for walks, we could go for runs, exercise, movement, anything that gets us moving more. One thing that I've found in this outbreak is that people's go-to exercise strategies have had to be altered dramatically. Gyms closed, what I do, my routine, those type of things they've had to make great adjustment to, and that's been an adversity people have had to work through. The other thing is that right now we have the benefit of outdoors, people who garden. This is an unbelievable time for them. I'm not one of those, but from what I've heard lately, people are actually talking me into it. I mean, listen to this. Someone described their love of gardening and the joy that they have to get them out of the worry and the thoughts that they've had, is if I can go out to my garden and create beauty, that's when I'm having my best day. I mean, how great is that? I mean, that's not just a hobby. That is wellness. That's a wellness perception. So, and the other thing that I found with this is people who maybe had to change their exercise routine, it's been for the better. I now go for walks with my wife or my partner, my spouse, doing things that we maybe hadn't done before. I know several couples who have adapted their partner into their process. So that part of your routine change, those are things for the better. But the behavioral part is anything we're actually doing to activate movement, and physiologically help me in my effort to manage and regulate my emotions. And then that takes me to the third area, and maybe psychologically the part that we wind up doing the most work on, because once you set those first two, they become self-sustaining and things people can do on their own. The third part is cognitively or psychologically. What are my thoughts? What's in my head when I'm at my most difficult, most emotional struggling time? And what can I do to change some of the thinking? So I call it, in this case, one of the most dramatic shifts that people can make is the shift from a threat mindset, what's happening to me, why is this happening, the threat of what's going to happen, that's where that worry and uncertainty goes to a challenge mindset. That every day, this gives me an opportunity to see how good I'm going to get. How good can I be at getting through this? Where am I going to learn? Where am I going to grow? How am I going to meet this challenge to be the person that I want to be? So that on the other end of this, I feel not only that I rebounded to baseline, but I'm actually even a better human being for me, for my family, for my friends, for my coworkers, that when I make those psychological changes, those psychological shifts, the mindset shifts that we can make like that, that's where the real clinical work comes in and where people find they consolidate the physiological, the behavioral, and the psychological.
Well, and I love what you're saying there, Charles, because to me, when you talk about that, it's so much about the choice. It's about making the choice to view it as a threatening situation or view it as an opportunity. And yes, all of our routines and our behaviors have really been challenged through all of this, but it's also been a beautiful opportunity for people. So I have a couple more questions for you yet, Charles, but if anyone has a question for Charles, we're going to take the end of the segment just to answer your questions. You can go ahead and put those in on the chat feature. There should be a little bubble that you can click on, and you can chat in those questions. But Charles, in terms of really what you've seen and going along that theme of there has been some good things that have come out of this, what have been some positive things that you have seen come out of this situation with your clients and others?
There's been a number of them, but I would say the ones that are most transformational to families or people in it, I mentioned one, that a couple who had never taken a walk before, a number of people like this that now do, they've made it a routine. In fact, I've noticed this fairly routinely over the last several weeks. I typically try to get as much exercise as I can. One of them is walking on the Fox River Trail. I've never seen as many people out there, nor have I seen as many couples out there, nor have I seen as many families out there. So I would say that's a great takeaway. Spending more family time together, spending time, even if it's TV, like here's a show we've always wanted to watch but have never been able to as a couple or a family. I've seen couples and families come together over that. But maybe one of the most impressive, not just that they're doing it, but the effect that it has had. When people have told me we're eating dinner together at the table for the first time in I can't remember when. That families that are taking that time, families that are spending more time together, more time to be able to say goodnight to my kids because I'm home, more time to have breakfast with my kids because I'm home, more time with my partner because I'm home. Those type of things, those type of stories when people say that. But it isn't just the content. It's like the smile on their face as they're saying it, like, who would have thought that this virus would have had these proverbial silver linings associated with it? So those are the really great things that I've seen evolve from this adversity.
That's awesome. That's good to hear, because I think if we all take a step back and we really reflect upon some of the changes we've experienced in the last few months, there are some positives. There are those good things that have happened. And I think even just for myself, it has forced me to slow down a little bit And I'm just noticing things I've never noticed before. I can't believe all the birds that are out by my house and some of those types of things. So there are gifts in all of this, and there are good things happening. So anyway.
Oh, my gosh. Linda, could I jump in and say one thing on that?
Absolutely.
That's such a great comment. The other day, on one of the walks that I was taking on the trail, I was talking to somebody as I was walking, and my phone was picking up the sound of the birds. I didn't even notice them, but the person I was talking to saying, wow, it sounds like you're in such a beautiful place. I hear the birds, and I'm like, wow, that is great. So the things we stop to, and kind of why I'm highlighting this and why I'm so happy you brought it up, this notion of mindfulness, that when we could be, and kind of alluding to what I referenced at the beginning, this capacity to be in the moment and appreciating it. So, and what it does to our well-being, but how it's a stress management technique just to be able to do what you were describing. So I'll give you an example. In working with athletes, I like to use the notion of win the moment, win this minute, win this second. You can't win what happened 10 minutes ago. You can't win a point 10 minutes from now, but you can always win this minute. If you're purposeful and intentional and deliberate to be mindful right now, this is when and how you can be your best. A lot of people have brought up, as I've worked with people these last several weeks, this special on ESPN about the Chicago Bulls and The Last Dance and the greatness of Michael Jordan. And the tie-in is this. They were talking about, was there any one thing that made him so great other than just being a great athlete? And the recognition of what that was this point. He refused to look at anything other than what's great in front of him. He refused to worry about the shot that he hadn't taken yet and only looked at what is happening right now. So when we can train that mindful quality to be here right now in this moment, relentlessly self-aware where we are, that quality that you were describing is so remarkably helpful to our mental health. And when we can cultivate that and strengthen that, we are in the best emotional place that we can be.
I love that. I think that's so incredibly powerful. And that's really what we can count on, right, is to be in this moment. If you have questions for Charles, I welcome you to put those in the chat. I don't see any yet. But feel free. We just have a couple of minutes left, so I did want to get to anyone's questions if you had them. You can go ahead and put those in the chat box. Charles, while we're waiting to see if there's any questions, any final thoughts, any final words of wisdom for everybody as we kind of, especially as we adjust to our new normal, things are opening up, but they're different than what they used to be. What would be your words of wisdom for everyone?
Yeah, several things. I think the most important is kind of as we do the new normal and we are moving forward is what's my vision of myself of how I want to be through this? If we could set a vision of how I want to be, how I want to learn and grow, even through the greatest adversity, if change always creates a new normal for us, even minimal ones, being adaptable, emotionally flexible, having emotional adaptability and agility is one of our greatest things. So setting a vision and the challenge mindset. But the other thing is an understanding of control. I think getting really clear on our purpose and what we can control. I said it before, my purpose in many respects is to help people meet what's possible for them, attain what's possible. Anytime we have a purpose, we can be clear about it, and we could train that to, regardless of adversity, we can always be purposeful about what we're doing. But I think at the end of the day, other than the win the moment, identify what's important right now, even if you use the acronym WIN to be able to help you strategize to be there is key. But at the end of the day, there's one last thing that we haven't talked about, actually even two because one fills in, is gratitude. Gratefulness for every day that we have, that it's a blessing, particularly in this time when our health might be most at risk. Every day that we have is a blessing, and that we can control the things that we can. The most resilient people, the most hardy people, the greatest resilient quality is the ability to be able to identify what is in my control. Relentlessly being able to control what we can, which is how we think, how we feel, and how we respond to any given situation we are in, dwarfs all that we can't. And when we're in that mindset of control, we are so much better than when we're focused on what we can't. So I look at it as almost being able to say in a dramatic way, a very clear way, I almost describe it as a reverse control freak. Be very controlling about what you can't and be able to let it go, but be very controlling of what you can and maximize that. And when we function with that awareness, we are at a better emotional place in a state of well-being than when we're focused on what we can't.
Definitely. And all of these skills, Charles, I think it's important for people to remember, too, it takes time, right? Like any muscle that we're toning and developing, it also takes practice to do mindfulness. It takes practice to be grateful, and the more we do it, the more natural those things will feel. So I do have a couple of questions I wanted to get to, and I know we just have a couple of minutes left, but I had a couple pop up here. So somebody wants to know, Charles, if I start my day on a negative, stressful note, how do I shake it off so that it doesn't ruin my work day?
Oh, my gosh. That's a super thoughtful, great question, and it almost takes me into a little bit of that gratitude. But here's what I would say. One, there's great science out there. There's a woman who wrote a book called The Telomere Effect who won a Nobel Prize for her work in this area, one of which is if you can bookend your day, it's almost like think of it as like the end of a shoelace, both ends. When you could bookend your day like the aglets of a shoelace, regardless of how miserably terrible your day may have been, if you could start your day with that deep breath activation and something you're thankful for, even if you had a terrible day, still end it at the end with that same thing, terrible day, but something I'm grateful for, a deep breath. On a chromosomal level, you are still experiencing good physical and emotional health. So nothing more than bookending your day is an incredible strategy to be able to manage your emotional and physical health in the most favorable way. This is absolutely unbelievable. If you could do that, that is a strategy that will work your lifetime. You'll also live longer, by the way.
Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting. Yep. Good.
And staying connected, because speaking of living longer, the idea is the more connected we are, social isolation is like the new smoking. It affects longevity. So when we could stay connected through isolation, and as you were pointing out, a strategy even beyond, we are promoting our emotional and physical well-being.
Yes. Awesome. Great stuff. Well, I have one more question that we'll get to, and then I want to be cognizant of everyone's time. We'll wrap up. But someone is asking, can you speak to how to handle interacting with others who aren't in the same mental mindset that you are? So, for example, someone who's handling it well while you're struggling, or vice versa. How do you handle that?
Now, that's a great question, too. And the array of emotion that people have, I think this is super thoughtful as well. The idea is to be able to, and this maybe goes to the resilience that I was talking about, and one last thing I would like to say with this question is supporting others, that even if you're not having the greatest day or in the same place, happy for them. I'm really happy for you. That is so great. This just happened to you. In the face of this, someone gets promoted or someone doesn't have financial concerns while someone else does. It's the ability to be able to still be empathic for someone else, either their plight or what's going great for them, and still taking ownership for you. Is that, okay, where does this take me emotionally and what do I want to do with it? As I could still be happy for someone else in the middle of whatever I might be experiencing. And that to me, this does become a way that I could focus on my own resilience and how do I want to be for myself and for other people. Because one phrase that I really like people to latch on and use is, as I'm building my resilience and I'm getting stronger and I'm getting better at what I want to be good at in the way I manage myself and my wellness. And the most resilient people aren't just good for themselves, they're also good for other people, which is where that quote comes in, a rising tide floats all boats. It isn't just about how I'm doing, it's about supporting others and how they're doing. And when we could help someone else out, there is no greater way to help yourself. When we're supporting others, we are inherently supporting ourselves, and that's where that rising tide quality comes in. We're not only building our own resilience, we're helping cultivate it in the community. And what better thing can we be doing than that, right?
That is so true. That is so true. And I think a lot of it comes back to whatever we focus on expands. So if we focus on helping ourselves, helping others, gratefulness, breathing, if we focus on the right stuff, that's the stuff that's going to expand in our world, and that's the stuff that's going to take over. And I think if we can work to put our minds there, that's going to benefit all of us in the long run. Charles, I can't thank you enough for doing this with us. We absolutely are so honored to have your time today to speak to everyone, and thank you so much for all of the really awesome information that you gave us. We're going to continue our mental health moments series. We're going to be bringing other experts to the table to have discussions surrounding really mental well-being, and we're just going to keep focusing on that. So I'm going to pop my email here in the chat. If anybody has any questions for me, feel free to reach out, and also let us know if you want to sign up for our Lifesaver Wellbeing series. That is a free series that is free to anyone in the community, anyone who has the web page. So that web page is bellin.org/lifesaver. We have monthly topics that you can take a look at our literature on that. So thank you again to all of you for joining us today. Thank you for taking some time for yourselves. I can't tell you how important it is, and we're honored to have your time today. So take care, everyone. Enjoy the beautiful weather that we're having, and hope to see you soon. Thank you, Charles.
Thank you. Have a good day, everybody. Stay safe.
You too.